Hey guys, so today I wanted to do a quick discussion video on this upcoming Suicide Squad game from Rocksteady Studios. And obviously, again, we don't know too much about this game. We're going to learn more about it at the DC Fandome event on August 22nd. I don't know to what extent. I have a hard time believing that we'll see gameplay for this one because my guess is that we're probably going to see gameplay for the Batman game from Warner Brothers Games Montreal, especially if the rumors of it still having a target 2020 release are true, or even if it has an early 2021 release, then same deal, they're probably going to want to prioritize that one, whereas this Suicide Squad game does sound like it's still about a year or so out. However, I do think that we're going to see a CGI trailer. It'll probably be something like Deadshot and Harley Quinn trying to take down Superman or something. It'll kind of show us the primary premise for the game, some of the mechanics in a more CGI form, of course, and also kind of the art style and tonal direction that they're taking with this game. So I'm personally very excited to see all of that, but I don't want to comment too much on certain aspects that we're not going to get information for quite a while. So for example, I don't want to speculate too much on whether or not this is going to have an extreme dedication to multiplayer at the expense of single player. Now, knowing Rocksteady, I certainly do not think that will be the case. I think that, like all their previous games, they'll just add rather than take away mechanics. So for example, I think that they will retain a very strong single player portion of this game. It will essentially probably be something of the scale of Arkham Knight, if I had to guess, but then on top of that, we'll also have a very fun multiplayer games as a service mode that increases the longevity of this title. And I don't know, we'll have to see what happens if that's truthfully the case. They might be moving in a more multiplayer direction, and I'm sure that will be a big portion and selling point of the game. But just knowing Rocksteady, they are very proficient in telling single-player stories, and they are very good at building open-world environments. So I don't necessarily see that being stripped away. With that said, I had somebody DMing me a little bit yesterday as this was being revealed, and they asked some interesting questions that, of course, I do not know the answer to, but I think that they make for some absolutely great discussion topics. So today I want to talk about whether or not an open world would actually even work for these characters. And I thought that this was a really great point, because I guess that in my head I always just assumed that it would be like another section of Gotham or something. But once you realize that they're taking on the entire Justice League in this game, that opens up so many possibilities. And they could go one of two directions. One, they could set it in one particular city. They could set it in like Metropolis or Star City, and they could follow that trend that they always have of making their map size 5 times the size of the previous game, so we could get a game that's 5 times the size of Arkham Knight. But I think more realistically and the more interesting approach that they could take would be to split up the map just a little bit. And I'll get to exactly what I mean by that in just a moment. But one thing that I have sort of thought about as I think about these characters is that while I think that you look at Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Deathstroke, King Shark, Killer Frost, Bronze Tiger, Cheetah, whoever they're going to add into this game, and they have a lot of really great combat mechanics. They have a ton of great story elements that they can bring to the table. In terms of traversal, Batman is just far more interesting, in my opinion, than any of them. And that's not to say that you can't do any interesting traversal with them. I mean, imagine running through the streets as Killer Croc, and there's the destructible environments, kind of like an Arkham Knight, so it's almost like you're driving the Batmobile, except you're running around as a dude. That could be really interesting. But with Batman, you just have so much variety. He can glide, he can dive bomb, he can grapple, he can do some parkour, and so I think that each character, in order to be successful, cannot just have a grappling hook or something. They will have to reinvent traversal, and really for each character, and this goes for combat as well, and it's a huge undertaking. I really respect Rocksteady for choosing this property, and I think it's going to pay off very well for them. I think that we're going to see something that is really special, that is a big evolution from the Batman Arkham games, but still is something that's very familiar, both from a story perspective and from a gameplay perspective. So, for me personally, I think it would actually be smarter if, rather than giving us one massive open world, if instead they gave us sections of multiple areas to explore. So kind of similar to what Avengers has done. I guess it's also potentially more akin to the Mass Effect games, where you have like this huge variety of planets, and each one feels very different, and you can kind of just go and explore them anytime you want. There's a lot of side missions on each one. Or I guess Jedi Fallen Order is also a more recent example, though I wouldn't want it to be as linear as Jedi Fallen Order. That was kind of one of my critiques, was that you had all these areas and all these planets that were free to explore, but they were just so linear that they weren't super fun, in my personal opinion. With that said, I think that just from the nature of what the Suicide Squad is, I don't know what any of the characters would do or how they would necessarily traverse, like an area that's 5 times the size of Arkham Knight. Obviously, you could look at it from a GTA kind of perspective, but Rocksteady, when you look at their team size, they've doubled in size since Arkham Knight, pretty much. But with that said, I mean, they're still not a very big team. And so even though this game will be a significant step up from Batman Arkham Knight in every imaginable way, I don't think we're going to be seeing something like Red Dead Redemption 2. So I think that splitting up a few different areas, and so instead of getting a huge Star City map or something, or a huge Metropolis map, I think that what they could do is give us 4 blocks of Metropolis, and 4 blocks of Gotham, and 4 blocks of Star City, and give us some fun things to do and some fun collectibles to find in each one. Maybe each location has like a side mission, but I think that splitting it up into 5 areas, maybe the size of Arkham City, 5 to 7 of them. Maybe they could add a few in DLC. And I think Slickmoth brought up a great point in his video last night, in which he talked about it would be cool if the story consisted of you going to sort of the 7 different bases of the Justice League members. So you go to Themyscira, then you go to Atlantis, then you go to Gotham, then Metropolis, then, Central City. And I think that's a really strong idea. And it would change up the tone and the pace of the game each time you go somewhere new. You'd get to have a really one-on-one experience with each particular hero. And I think that there's very strong reason to believe that we will, in fact, be seeing, a lot of different locations in this game. Now, whether or not they'll be free to explore, that remains to be seen. But there's a ton of potential for multiplayer maps, but also for some basic traversal. For each of these characters, I think that the direction that they ought to go is more parkour-based. Obviously, we'll have a character like Deadshot, who arguably could retain a grappling hook, but I don't want it to play just like the Arkham grappling hook. I'd like them to kind of reinvent the traversal. And when I say that a lot of them don't have as much variety in terms of traversal as Batman, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's something that they could build off of. And if each character was given a somewhat unique way to traverse, that could be interesting. Maybe for collectibles, not Riddler trophies, but collectibles akin to that, you could have to use the different abilities of the squad members to get one. So for example, let's say there's a collectible behind a weak wall, maybe you have to charge into it as Killer Croc. And then inside there's, some parkour that Harley Quinn has to do in order to bypass a security system. And I just think that there's some really great potential there. I just don't know that a huge map is necessarily the best direction to go, but I also don't know that a super linear, almost Arkham Asylum experience is the way to go either. I feel like that would be very limited. And so it's a delicate balance, and I could see Rocksteady doing any direction. And once again, the great thing about Rocksteady is that they've proven themselves so many times in so many ways that if this game was almost more of a step back to an Arkham Asylum type approach at a single player experience, I would be fully on board. If they do in fact say, we're opening up all of Central City for you to explore, I would also be completely on board. So I'm ultimately very excited to see what this game is, to see what the single player and multiplayer elements are, but I also think that there's just so much potential in regards to what this map could be and the variety that they could do, especially if they split it up. I don't know, I'm just very excited to see what Rocksteady does. Like I said, I think that this is something that will feel very familiar in all the right ways, but it will also change up the pace and allow them to do something new and add a lot of gameplay elements that you simply can't add to Batman, like gunplay and a lot of super abilities. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.